And welcome to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I am Menners, and the first day of the World Test Championship final is done and dusted, and we have had an absolute thriller. 14 wickets fell in a topsy-turvy day, and heading into this match, everybody was talking about the fast bowlers from both teams, and they have had a decisive impact on today's action. Both teams' fast bowlers were in fine display. Australia was sent in to bat by South Africa, and they were all out for 212. They lost 5 for 20 after tea in a stunning collapse. Bo Webster top scored with 72. Steve Smith also made a fine half century. He looked in good form. He made 66. But Kagiso Rabada took 5 for 51, a devastating spell that clawed South Africa into this contest. And then in reply, South Africa crawled to 4 for 43 in the last session. Mitchell Starc took 2 wickets. Cummins took 1 wicket. Hazelwood took 1 wicket. And South Africa trailed by 169 runs with 6 wickets in hand. It was an eventful last session with 9 wickets falling across both innings. So a lot of action right up until the end. And you have to say this match is fairly evenly balanced, although with those last wickets in the final session, Australia, you would have to think have a slight advantage considering South Africa will have to bat last. It was pretty good conditions all day. It was cloudy in the beginning, and that's when South Africa looked really dangerous with the ball. But then when the sun came out, it was still very difficult batting. The pitch was seaming. There was a bit of movement in the air. So it wasn't easy for the batters, even when the sun was out. So this is going to be a tricky wicket, and it's tricky for South Africa having to bat last. Yeah, so Temba Bavuma won the toss and elected to bowl. I spoke about the Australian team in the preview of this match. So we know what Australia's team was, but South Africa, they named a pace bowling attack of Rabada, Jansen, Ngidi, and Maharaj. So Patterson missed out. They also included Mulder to bat at 3 for the first time. So in both teams, you've got 2 batters batting at number 3 for the first time in this final. So South Africa sent Australia in, and Rabada beat Usman Khawaja with the first ball of the test match. And it was 3.4 overs before Australia got off the mark. So a brand new opening combination, Marnus Labuschagne and Usman Khawaja. And as I said in the preview, I was a bit worried about those two being very defensive, and it took them 22 runs to get off the mark. And then in the 7th over of play, Khawaja is out for a 20-ball duck. Rabada got him. He came around the wicket, and Khawaja edged a good delivery to first slip. And that was the first wicket. That brought Cameron Green to the crease, and he was batting for number 3 for the first time, but he didn't survive long. It was 2 wickets in the over for Rabada. Cameron Green was caught at second slip. Good catch down low. He was out for 4 of 3 deliveries, so not a good start to his career at number 3. And that had Australia 2 wickets down in the first hour, and they ended the first hour at 2 for 29. Marnus Labuschagne, he got out edging a full ball off Jansen, who bowled around the wicket and just tempted Labuschagne into a drive, and that made the score. That made the score 3 for 46. Labuschagne was out for 17, and he made those runs off 56 deliveries. Yeah, so disappointing innings from Labuschagne, disappointing from Khawaja and from Green. So the top order failing, and then that brought Travis Head to the crease, and that was just before the lunch break. And boy, really hoping that Smith and Head could put on a partnership, but just before the lunch break, Head was caught down the leg side off Jansen, just a little tickle at one, and it was a great catch from Verena, and Australia was 4 for 67 at lunch. So, very disappointing session for Australia. 4 wickets, exactly what South Africa wanted after winning the toss, and it left a lot of work for the middle order to do. Steve Smith was 26 not out at the lunch break, and he looked in good form, so there was some hope there. And Bo Webster hadn't joined him at the crease when they went off for lunch. So vindication for Bavuma to bowl first, taking those 4 wickets, and Australia were just dawdling along at a pretty pedestrian run rate in that first session. But then the sun was out, and Steve Smith came out in terrific form after the lunch break. He took the attack to the South Africans, and he was stroking the ball to all parts of the ground, and he looks in great form. Then Bo Webster was hit in front off Jansen when he was just on 1. That was reviewed by South Africa, but it was umpire's call on impact. It would have been out if the umpires had given it out, and it was very close on umpire's call. So South Africa unlucky not to get Webster early, but then they made their own luck because Rabada hit Webster plumb in front on the back leg, and no one appealed. The umpire, I think Stubbs appealed, but no one really appealed much. The umpires waved the appeal away. Bavuma didn't even think about, I think, referring it to DRS. And then when you saw the replay, it looked like Webster was plumb in front. It would have smashed into middle stump. So they could have had Webster out very early. And Webster went on to top score, so a huge mistake there from South Africa, almost a South African style choke. I think they thought Webster hit the ball, but the ball might have brushed the pad, or his bat might have brushed the pad. But either way, they should have considered the replay, referring it to DRS a lot more than they did, because it was plumb in front. Anyway, Smith went on to bring up his half century, 50 off 76 balls. And he was crucial in that partnership between he and Webster, because Smith was in great form. Webster was really struggling out there, playing and missing a lot. He was up against a red-hot South African attack. Rabada and Jansen were bowling really well. The problem for South Africa throughout the day, though, was Lungi Ngidi didn't have a great day with the ball, and he couldn't quite back up Rabada and Jansen in the manner they needed. So it just allowed Australia to get off the hook. And, if Australia go on to win this test match, South Africa will feel maybe they let Australia get, to 212 when they could have kept them around that 150 mark. But Ngidi didn't bowl well in support. And, there was some discussion in the commentary box that Dane Patterson should have played instead of Ngidi. But he certainly let the pressure off and allowed the Aussie batters to get away at times. So then, partnership between Smith and Webster, and they were very good. They kept the run rate going. Although Webster was struggling, he was finding the gaps and turning over the strike. Maharaj was brought on just before the drinks break in the second session. And at drinks, Australia were 4 for 123. So really good hour for Australia after the lunch break, where they'd gone into it in disarray. Webster and Smith had put on 56 in that, 56 in that hour after lunch. South Africa were flustered because Webster hit one off the middle of the bat, and they reviewed it for LBW. So that was one of the worst reviews in history. So then we saw some history. Smith went past Warren Bardsley to become the highest scoring overseas batter at Lords. And when he got out, he had 591 runs at Lords and an average of 59.10. Smith has always loved batting at Lords. He made a double 100 in 2015. He made another 100 in 2023, and at the World Test Championship Final, he made 100 as well last time. So that wasn't the Lords, but he just loves these big occasions, but in particular Lords. And what a great piece of history to be the highest scoring overseas batter ever, and doing it an average of almost 60. He passed 50 for the third consecutive time at Lords, and the fifth time in his last 6 innings at the famous London venue. the Daily Telegraph blog. So terrific stuff from Smith. He was eventually out, though. Very disappointing dismissal. Geez, he will be frustrated. He had 100 for the taking. He had a big 100 for the taking. Aidan Markram came on, bowling his gentle little off spinners, and it works. And I'm going to use the expression, sometimes shit gets wickets. Markram just threw up this loopy little off spinner. Smith tried to cover drive it for 4, edged it to Jansen at first slip. He took a good catch, and Smith was out for 66. And as I said, he had 100 for the taking. He looked in sublime form. He's cracking the ball off the middle of the bat, and yeah, just looked terrific. And he was the one that could have got Australia up to a really big total, but alas, it wasn't to be. And that had Australia 5 for 146. Webster and Smith had put on 79 and a crucial 79 partnership. And then Carey came out and he started positively. And Webster got to his second half century. He got to 50 off just 69 balls. He battled early, but he's got a great temperament, Bo Webster. And this is where I think you see the experience of someone who's played a lot of first-class cricket, who's made a lot of runs at domestic level. He knew that he just needed to battle through that difficult period with Rabada and Jansen. And if he could do that, he'd be able to prosper. And he did. He got to 50 off 69 balls, a crucial knock. And Australia went to the tea break at 5 for 190. And I've got to say, at this point, I was feeling pretty positive about Australia's chances. We'd seen a nice little partnership between Smith and Webster. Carey was looking great. He was 21 not out at the, I think he was 21 not out at the tea break, and he looks in terrific form. He has been smoking them in all forms of cricket, because he made that great 100 in the Shield final chasing, but he also made a lot of runs in the Champions Trophy. Before that, he looked good in Sri Lanka. So he's been batting so well. Made that big 100 in the second test in Sri Lanka. So he's never been batting better. And when they went to the tea break, I'm thinking Webster and Carey could put on a decent little partnership here. But after the tea break, it was disaster for Australia. And strange, because the sun was out, you're thinking this is the time Australia can get some runs, soft ball. But Carey tried to reverse sweep Maharaj just after the tea break. 2 runs after the tea break, in fact, and he was out bowled. It looked terrible. It always looks terrible when you miss a reverse sweep. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of the situation. So he was out for 23. It was a 46-run partnership, and that had Australia 6 for 192. And then they collapsed, and Australia, from that point on, lost 5 for 20 to be all out for 212. Rabada got his 5-wicket haul. He went past Alan Donald to be the 4th highest wicket taker for South Africa at test level. And I went through his record when previewing this match. There's no better record, basically, in test cricket than Kagiso Rabada's. So incredible stuff for him. And he destroyed Australia in that last session. And we were all out for 212, about 40 minutes after the tea break, in 56.4 overs. And I'll get to the commentary later, but Dan Norcross was, I don't know, rabbiting on SEN about Australia batting conservatively. We scored 212 in 56.4 overs. That's pretty good going in a test match. Steve Smith, 66. He went at almost 60, his strike rate. Webster went at almost 80, his strike rate. So, yeah, decent stuff from Australia. So, Rabada 5 for 51. Marco Jansen, a very good 3 for 49. He got Labuschagne. He got Travis Head, the big wicket. And he also got Nathan Lyon a bit later on. And the other wicket takers were Markram and Maharaj, who got 1 each. And as I said, Lungi Ngidi, 8 overs, none for 45. South Africa will need him to perform better in the second innings. So, look, I think after Australia were 4 for 67, they'll be pretty happy with that recovery to get 212. And then if you look at the specific incidents, for example, where Webster, they didn't even review that plum LBW, that could have cut that partnership down very quickly. And, Australia made a much lower score. So all in all, Australia battled to 212. And then South Africa came out to bat with about an hour and 45 minutes left. Well, it was disastrous for them. Stark, as usual, got a wicket in his first over. He got Markram playing on to a big full in-swinger. That is the 19th time in Tests that Mitchell Stark has taken a wicket in his first over. South Africa were 1 for none and in real trouble. That brought Mulder to the crease, who was playing at 3 for the first time, and he was dropped on 1 by Carey. An easy catch, and that would have had South Africa 2 for 8. So at this stage, you're thinking, oh God, hopefully that catch, when you're defending 212, you've got to take everything. It was a full ball from Stark to Mulder. He just got a little edge, and Carey, because the ball wobbled, I think, after the bat, dropped it. He was all at sea. He was almost on his knees when he was trying to catch it. So, yeah, poor effort from Carey, but it didn't cost much. We'll see later. Later on, Mulder was out pretty quickly. But that would have been Stark's second wicket. He didn't have to wait long, though, because Ryan Rickleton was out off Stark for 16 off 23. That made the score 2 for 19. He edged a full delivery, and Kawaja took a great catch to his right behind the wicketkeeper. Sorry, not behind the wicketkeeper, but it was a catch that Carey might have gone for. But Kawaja got to it, and Rickleton was out for 16. He was the only batter that looked to score any runs in that last session. That had South Africa 2 for 19. And then Mulder's miserable innings was finally put to an end by Cummins, who bowled him with a superb off-cutter, sort of inducker off the slope. It seemed to seam off the Lord's slope, and he was out for 6 off 44, Mulder. He only added 5 after being dropped, and that had South Africa 3 for 25. And at the same time, the same over, Bavuma edged one to the slips, and it didn't quite carry. And that had happened a bit earlier, and I just wonder if these Aussie slips were quite close enough. But yeah, I mean, at this point, the Australian bowling attack was swarming. They were on fire. Stark had bowled nice and full, trying to get the ball to swing, and that had complemented beautifully with Cummins and Hazelwood, who were hitting that aggressive, short of a length line and getting the ball to seam off the slope and the natural variation of the pitch. So, really devastating stuff for Australia. And South Africa just weren't scoring any runs. They weren't rotating the strike. It's easier for me to say that because I don't have to face that good bowling, but they did allow the Australian attack to settle in a way, the way the Australians allowed South Africa to settle earlier in the day. But Australia wasn't finished there, although they had 3 wickets. They wanted one more. But before that, Temba Bavuma finally got off the mark. It took him 31 balls. That gives you an idea of how slow they were going. But then the youngster Tristan Stubbs was bowled by an absolute jaffer from Hazelwood, a huge off-cutter that went between bat and pad and cannoned into the stumps. And that had South Africa 4 for 30 and reeling. After bowling Australia out for 212, they look to have fluffed an opportunity. We'll only know tomorrow on day 2 how badly they've stuffed it up, because they had an opportunity. If they can get through this last session, and come out tomorrow on a maybe slightly better batting conditions, try and get a lead. But they finished the day 4 for 43. They're still 169 runs behind. So much work to do for them, and they've got to bat last. You'd have to say from here, Australia are favourites, but maybe one of these players can make it. Then South Africa needs someone to make a score and try and challenge that 212, and then it becomes a sort of last inning shootout between the two teams. But yeah, a devastating last session for South Africa. Australia looked awesome with the ball. As I said, Stark was bowling beautifully, keeping it nice and full, and Hazelwood and Cummins were there as usual. Great bowling, and Lyon bowled 1 over. We only saw Lyon for 1 over. All right, a question here from a listener on Twitter, Alex. He asked if I can comment on KP's commentating. He says he wants to smack the bloke. That's Alex saying that. Look, I haven't been watching too much of the ICC TV coverage. I've been watching it, but I've been listening to the radio coverage. And yeah, as I said, Norcross was kind of smashing Webster for looking a bit ordinary in the beginning, but I thought Webster batted pretty well. They were tough conditions, and I thought Norcross was a bit unfair on Webster. In fact, Norcross was banging on about how the batting wasn't aggressive across both innings, and basically insinuating that both these teams should be playing baseball, which they shouldn't be. All right, so that is it for the wrap of day one from the World Test Championship final. You have to say Australia swung the momentum late in the day. Half centuries to Webster and Smith got Australia above 200, 212. Kagiso Rabada, an amazing 5-wicket haul. And South Africa, when they had an opportunity to maybe lead, well, not today, but to get on the way of taking a first innings lead, they stuffed it up in that last session. They got stuck, and Australia were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And it's going to be really tough for South Africa tomorrow morning. So for South Africa, they need to start tomorrow. You've got, they've got to try. You've got Beddingham and you've got Bavuma out there. They've got to try and put on a partnership. You've got Jansen to come, then the bowlers, and try and match that Australian score of 212. But yeah, you'd have to say Australia just showing their class so far, and a real exhibition of fast bowling today, and a thrilling day of Test cricket. 14 wickets, some of the best fast bowlers in the history of the game going toe to toe. All right, before I go, exciting news. We've launched our official Cricket Unfiltered merchandise store, and we've teamed up with Exactamundo. It's a brilliant partnership. Exactamundo is a long-time supporter of the show, and they're founded by a long-time listener of the show. So we've got great T-shirts, hats. You need to be getting ready for the Ashes this summer. So if you go to the episode notes, there's a link there to our new merchandise store. And Exactamundo is a video and animation design and content production company. They also create high quality videos and animation for the corporate world, such as product promos and explainer videos. So check them out. Their website is linked in the episode notes. And as I said, check out all the great Cricket Unfiltered t-shirts. There'll be more to come for summer and more to come for the Ashes. All right, that's it for the day one wrap of the World Test Championship final. Honours with Australia, but still so much action to come.